Well, hey gentlemen, how you doing? It is Sunday, and it is close to 60 degrees and sunny outside. Beautiful weather, and I'm getting ready to put an edge on the new knives. And I wanted to take a moment here to show you something that I got in the mail, and this is it. And a lot of you know this fella. It is Ron Walsworth, Wally's Place 66, and he did a video recently where he said his stickers were ready, and I put my request in. I mean, just as soon as the video was finished, and yeah, he was very generous in getting these to me, and he sent a little note here. And I think this is Michigan. I always see people, when I lived in Michigan, they were talking about, well, where in Michigan do you live? And they would hold their hands up and they would just, you know, put their finger on where they lived in Michigan. So I suppose I lived right about here in Detroit and areas north of that when I lived in Michigan. So, yeah, I believe this note is supposed to be shaped like the state of Michigan. And also, on a little more serious note now, if you've been following Ron's channel, you know that he and his family were in a pretty serious car accident here in the last few days, and luckily everybody is going to be okay. I know his vehicle was totaled, but they are all still in one piece, and we're glad to hear that. But we're thinking about you, and we're just pulling for you, Ron. So I wanted to wish you guys the best, heal up, and just you know, keep on keeping on, and we're all behind you, buddy. And I'm going to read his note. It says, Dale, I have been enjoying all your videos. I'm loving those knives and have been learning neat tidbits. I appreciate you and your comments, Ron. And here are his stickers. That's a nice note, Ron. And he sent two different sizes here, if you guys can see those. And just like with Chuck's sticker, Old Brat Rider, I'm not going to peel these. Oh, this one's magnetic. So this one's going to go on the Kennedy, and this is going to go under a tiny little magnet on the lid of my Kennedy until I find a more suitable permanent home for them. And it's still, probably don't want to peel it and just make it less of a sticker than it is. I'm weird about that. Chuck's sticker is still over there, unstuck but applied. And these are going to join them, his sticker over on my Kennedy. And Ron, again, you guys heal up. We're glad you're okay. Obviously we are. And we're pulling for you. Just hang in there. And we'll be right back. I'm going to put these over on the Kennedy. Okay, so there it is. Right under the license plate he sent me. And I put this the magnetic one right there on the front. So that, again, really nice. Love to get these sorts of things. And again, all of our thoughts are with you, Ron, and your family. So we're going to get back to what we were doing. You know, it's things like that sticker and what they stand for that really drive home what YouTube means to me. It's my association with all you guys that would be my friends and probably over here shooting the breeze in my shop with me if geography allowed that. So YouTube for us, I guess, is a way to do that virtually. So yeah, every one of you that interact with me, you know, you mean the world to me, guys. So get back to what we were doing. We're getting ready to put an edge on our knives, and the first thing I do is I get a lot of metal out of the way because these were raw edged and had no cutting edge on throughout the grinding process and the heat treating process and all that. So when we first strike our lines and we grind down, it leaves roughly 40 to 60 thousandths depending on the blade stock thickness, which has to be removed first before we ever think about moving over, you know, to bench stones. And all I use is I take one of my sharper, finer cut files, and just keeping the same angle as I'm going to use on the stones. And here's the thing: if you sharpen a lot of knives, And then you get a feel for this, and you can do this by eye. It's just an instinct that you just develop over time. If you do not, and if you're going to try your hand at making a knife, by all means you can still do this. But this little step here is going to also tell you how successful you were in the heat treatment phase. And I've been working on this edge right here, or this side of this blade here, with about 1200 grit, just getting any tiny little blemishes in there out. And I always do that before I put a final buff on there. So I've knocked the shine down just a little bit. But what I do is, by eye again, I just hold the same angle that I'm going to hold over on my bench stones, and I just begin draw filing. And what I said about finding out about your heat treatment when you do this, here's the thing. A file is brittle, it's hard steel, and if I bend the file, it's going to snap. I don't want this to do that under flex. So the heat treatment that I put into my knives kind of finds the best of both worlds. You want good edge holding, but you do want what's called toughness. You want that ability to flex, because these knives are field knives. They're going to be called upon to do many things besides simply cut. In the field dressing process, you are sometimes called upon to put your knife down, say, inside certain joints on animals, and use this more or less as a pry bar to pop that hip joint apart, the pelvis joint, breaking the sternum. And that may sound gross, but it's if you need to get an animal chilled out pretty quickly, you've got to open them up so your meat doesn't spoil. So the way I make my knives, they have that spring temper. They lean toward a little bit harder, but not so much that the knives are going to snap. I can lock my knives in a vise and bend them 90 degrees, and they will not break on me. And that's what we're shooting for. For me, O1 steel and D2 achieves that marriage of the best of both worlds. So what I do, I find that the file is not easily cutting the knife, but it's doing just enough. And I draw file that extra metal out of the way just till I get to a point where it'll catch my skin. Not cut it, but just catch it. And I know I've got it to a point. Then I move over on the bench stones. But I just, again, going for symmetry, and just start a slow draw filing process. Not so much this, but just a draw file so you get a nice smooth edge starting to form. And this is just getting the waste stock out of the way. This is the roughing stage of sharpening. And if you find that the file again won't cut the knife steel, then the next time you heat treat a knife, pay more attention to the drawing phase. You're getting the hardness and brittleness out to the point where it becomes something usable. So I will do this on both knives just till I get that first hint of a cutting edge, and then we're going to an India stone to dress that up. And then we'll move up to progressive grits of oil stone, and we'll show you that when we come back. But I'm just going to continue here, and I've got the other hidden tang knife. It's going to be in here next, and we'll get this step out of the way. Okay, we've gotten the draw filing part out of the way, which, as I said, is just the roughing stage to get the excess metal out of there. And if you tried to do that part on your stones, well, you're going to wear your stones out a lot sooner than you need to. Your stones really only need to come into play when you've got a finer edge to get into shape. So what I do, just any India stone, I've got a couple over there in the drawers, and this is just part of a tri-hone set that I keep on the bench just for sharpening tools. But the India stone is good for just taking care of where I draw filed, and again, just keeping your angle the same place where you had it over there on the filing. You just want to begin drawing your knife down. And if you draw a file, like I was showing, you won't get serrations in your edge that you'll have to work harder to get out. You don't want a sawtooth pattern or any file marks. You just want a smooth cut, which is why you use the file in that manner. So as far as sharpening, there are as many ways to sharpen a knife as there are different kinds of people, and everybody has a preferred way. Some guys like to use water stones, some like the diamond stones. Both of those are really nice. I like to use oil stones when I move to that phase, and I don't use oil on the India stone, obviously, because it would just absorb right into the stone. But the thing about it is, if you sharpen a lot of knives, you get a feel for this, and you can hold a consistent angle. And when I sharpen a knife, I think first of what the knife's going to be used to do. These are field knives, so I try for about a 25 to 28 or so degree included angle. That included meaning both sides of your cutting edge. That's going to be about a 12.5 or so angle that you're going to hold this up off the stone. Now there are sharpening guides, there are sharpening jigs that will help you hold that edge consistently. I've done this a lot, and I do it a lot, and you develop a touch that if you stick with it, you don't need to go to a sharpening aid unless you just feel like you want to. There's nothing wrong with them. And if I couldn't hold a consistent edge, believe me, I would use one. So all I want to do is get this just honed down. It doesn't take much to get this all evened out. You just working under a pretty bright light with some pretty decent glasses on, if your eyes are like mine. And I'm just feeling the edge and feeling my progress. And it won't take but about a few dozen strokes on this India stone. We can put it aside, and then I'm going to move over to these. First with this is a soft Arkansas oil stone, and I put a good amount of oil on the surface of the stone, and the oil's job is to hold that metal that I'm taking away up in suspension off the stone. Keeps the stone clean and keeps your stone cutting. And your oil will darken with use as the metal gets suspended in it. And when it gets to a point where it's really dirty, then you wipe that oil off, you put some fresh on, and you stay with one grit of stone till it's done just about all it's going to do. Now this soft Arkansas will get it to a point where it will shave hair. And again, I look at the type of knife that I'm sharpening, and that's going to help me determine my angle, and it's also going to tell me what kind of edge to put on it as far as strength. A kitchen knife, a fillet knife, things like that, I'm going to hold it a little bit flatter angle because I want that to have more of a super razor edge. A dull knife in the kitchen is a dull knife anywhere to me is a dangerous tool, because it forces you to force. Bad things can happen when you do that. But for these hunting knives, I want a little bit stronger edge. I want more metal in back of that cutting edge. When I'm done with them, they will shave hair, but I'm after strength and longevity of that cutting edge. And I've been told by people that have used my knives out in the field, they're generally getting through about 4 white-tailed deer, and that is doing everything to them, the processing as well as just the field dressing, and that's pretty good. That's not asking too much of a hunting knife before they have to go back to the stone, and then it's just a touch-up, a couple of swipes, and they're back to that edge, and that's what I shoot for. Okay, it's Monday evening. Come back to this. And I'm starting to go to the oil stones now, and I'm starting with my soft Arkansas. And I put a good amount of oil on it. and just spread it around a little bit. And this soft Arkansas works it down pretty quickly. And I'll do this step until I feel like I've got a cutting edge on there that will probably begin to shave hair with just a little bit of effort. And then we'll be done with this one, and we'll move in to the hard Arkansas, this white stone. So I'll get each knife done on this stone before I move up. I'm switching to the white hard Arkansas. I put some of the marbles on there just so you can more easily see how much oil I'm talking about using on these. Oil is cheaper than the stones by far, but you really want to float that metal up in suspension and keep it out of the pores of that stone. Now in this white Arkansas, it has a much different feel, and you know that it's taking a finer cut. I hope my arm's not in the way of what I'm doing. Well, it pretty much is, but let's see if I can keep it out. You can see on the pull stroke just how the oil rides up the blade, and that floats that metal up out of the way and keeps your stone cutting. Alright, going to move up to my last grit of oil stone before I get over to the leather strop. And on this black Arkansas, there is a huge difference in the feel of it. This really does a nice job of polishing the edge. So the burr, or the wire edge that you raise up at the very edge of your cutting edge, is nothing huge going with this grade of stone. Stone's so fine it almost feels like it's doing nothing, but I mean it is. I mean, I can't hardly feel any burr at all. You run it this way, your fingernail works really well too, to feel that there's a burr on there. You'll feel that little bit of drag. And there is not much of one. Oh yeah. Yeah, you get a pretty clean shave with that. Alright, moving to knife number 2. And we'll come back when we're going to put it on the leather. Alright, time to put these on the strop. And as I said earlier, this is just plain leather that I have rubbed really well with some white jeweler's rouge. You can really use any color of the rouge you want, white, red, just whatever you have. But the idea is just start down at the end, and again at that very same angle, you just want to draw the knife backwards up and down the leather. And you'll see this leather start to darken because this also removes just a little bit of metal. It doesn't take very many strokes on this. running out of hair on this arm. There we go. Oh yeah, it takes it right off. Okay. So we've gotten the oil pretty much off of these, and we've cleaned off our stones, cleaned out the boxes. So now we're going to take some lacquer thinner and get all the grease, all the oil off these, off the steel here. And our next step is going to be putting the logo on them. So we'll come back for that. Alright, it's Tuesday evening now, and before I put my logo on the knives, I like to go ahead and put a final buff on them. And I like to do that before I get the logo on, because if I buff after the logo, I may mute it out. Although I do buff the logo after I apply it to get that black oxide out of the letters. Kind of want a subtle trademark on this knife, just there if you look, but not like a billboard. I never did like that. But I just use a 3-step process in my buffing, starting over here with an emery and moving up to an intermediate buff just with a rouge. In this case I'm going to use red. And then over here on this wheel, let me pan out around so you can see that. This is a green chrome wheel. Nice and soft, and really does a good job putting that really bright hard finish on there. And really, of all the things I do in my shop, this is the most dangerous. Buffing is extremely dangerous. But the thing about it is you have to pay attention to what you're doing, and you have to use the right technique. And the right technique, I'm going to pan in on this emery wheel so you can see, but the right technique, your direction of rotation is like this. So the right technique is to keep any edge away from the top of this wheel. So you approach the wheel in this fashion, and I always watch right here. I'm very careful not to get anything in that area that this buffing wheel can grab, because you don't have time to react. I don't care who you are. It's going to take it out of your hand, and this is a razor sharp knife. But even before it was sharpened, it always had a point. But it's going to take this thing, it's either going to stick it in this, it's going to slam it down on the floor, or it may take it and put it into me. You know, anything can happen when a buffing wheel gets a hold of this stuff. So you have to pay attention. So first thing I do is just put a light, bit of compound, and the key to applying compound to a buffing wheel is lightly and often. You don't want to load them up too much, so it's going to come in slowly, and I always like to leave it down at an angle like that. Should it grab it, it's liable just to move it in that direction. If I come at it like that, I'm losing the knife at that point. I'm going to keep it moving. Don't linger too long in any one spot, and don't build up a lot of heat. It doesn't take much effort. You just want the compound to do the work. And you can watch your progress at this angle. You can kind of watch your progress just in the reflection you're leaving. But you want to keep that cutting edge flat to the blade. You don't want to come at it like that and round out the edge you've worked really hard to get on there. And so again, if I want to get this part of the blade that I've been keeping off that wheel, I simply turn it over and come at it from this side. And again, my focus is always right here on the area I never want to touch that wheel with. Buffing is just an incredibly dangerous operation if you do it improperly. And it's not forgiving either. It will make you pay for a mistake immediately. And it's scary when something is snatched out of your hands by a buffing wheel. And as we move up the line, the softer my wheels get. And when we get to this green chrome wheel, you can see the loose layers of this wheel. It's very grabby. So yeah, just be careful. That's really all I have to say about that. So I'm going to go ahead and carry on, and when you see them again, they're going to be over on the bench getting logoed. I'm getting ready to put the little maker's mark on the knife. And I just take my stencils and I just put it where I think it's going to look best on the knife, and I just protect the areas of the steel I don't want to etch with some electrician's tape. And so this is the marking pad, and it's just a 12-volt power supply, essentially. You can do this with a battery charger. But I take a little bit of the, they call it electrolyte, salt water, any liquid that's going to conduct electricity. And I have just lightly wet this pad. You don't want to put too much on to where it's going to flow out and force itself under your stencil, because wherever this electrolyte goes on the steel, it's going to leave a mark. So you don't want to push down too hard and force it into areas you don't want it to go. You'll end up with a blurred image. I leave it on for about 10 seconds, and I'm not pushing too hard. I do rock it back and forth just a little to make sure I get a good contact to all the little letters in that stencil. Yeah, that's the logo. And we'll do the other knife, and that'll be that for these. Then I'm going to make a lanyard for this hole, and when I come back, we'll have them with the sheaths, have the sheaths waxed and buffed, and you can see the finished product. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear the wind blowing outside, but it is blowing pretty hard. We're having gusts up to about 50 miles an hour out there, and about 30 miles an hour sustained. So yeah, but sunny, and the temperature's not too bad. So we got them finished, guys, and I brought out some other things that from my life that coincided with the time period where this pattern kind of came to be and came into my life anyway. I don't know how long ago that Warren Boughton actually drew this knife up, but just about the same time that I made this pouch is when my uncle got this pattern from him. So it really started the whole ball rolling to the finished knives we have in front of us right now. This is, I've showed this in another video, but this is from a buck I got, back in my teens, and every part of this is from that animal. And the same uncle who knew Warren Boughton, that is my uncle Jack Woodruff, he showed me the steps and the process to tan this leather. We used the brain tanning method, which was provided by the animal also. So, like I said, all of this was from that one deer. And about a decade later, in my 20s, he made this belt buckle for me out of an elk crown. And he made this for me when I joined up with this this very fine organization right here. And that's very special to me. But yeah, I think that if those men were here today, obviously they're gone now, but they would look at these, and I don't know if my Uncle Jack or Hawk Boughton would have made the knives exactly the same way that I have, but I'd like to think they would look at them and give their seal of approval. They might just look down at me and say, good job, kid. And yeah, finally, from this pattern that has sat in a photo album all these years to a 3D product that wouldn't be here unless somebody got off their duff and finally made it. So I figured it was high time. And I've enjoyed making this series, and I do really appreciate all your guys' comments. You really did make this enjoyable for me. And it's a good process to go from concept to something you can hold in your hand and know it was here through your efforts. So that's it. And I don't know how many other knife making type of videos I'm going to be doing. But you know, maybe as I develop some new models and things like that, I'll bring you guys along and just show you what I've made, because you know from the previous videos in this set, I've got a lot of them in the works. But yeah, I wanted to kind of take it through a step-by-step process of what I do to create a knife. Again, I really do appreciate you guys coming along, and you know, your friendship and your viewership means the world to me, as I said earlier. But you guys take care, and I really thank you for watching, and we'll be seeing you in the next video. Thanks a lot, guys.